Throughout American history, the right to vote has been a cornerstone of democracy. But for many, this right was not easily accessible. Poll taxes, literacy tests, and other barriers were systematically used to disenfranchise racial and ethnic minorities, particularly African Americans, until the Voting Rights Act of 1965. Today, I want to take you through the history of these voting restrictions, their impact, and the hard-fought battle to overcome them. After the Reconstruction era, Southern states implemented a series of laws known as Jim Crow laws and Black Codes. These laws were designed to enforce racial segregation and suppress the political power of African Americans. Among the most effective tools of suppression were poll taxes and literacy tests. Poll taxes required voters to pay a fee to vote, which many African Americans and poor whites could not afford. Literacy tests, on the other hand, were often rigged. Literacy tests, on the other hand, were often rigged. White voters might be asked simple questions, while African Americans were given nearly impossible ones, like being able to recite the entire Constitution. These barriers were not about fairness or intelligence. They were about maintaining white supremacy and preventing minorities from having a voice in the democratic process. The impact of these barriers was devastating. In some states, voter turnout among African Americans dropped to less than 5%. Entire communities were silenced, their voices erased from the political process. I think about stories like that of Fannie Lou Hamer, a sharecropper and civil rights activist who was forced to take a literacy test in Mississippi. She was asked to interpret a section of the state constitution, a task even a lawyer would struggle with. When she couldn't, she was turned away. These stories remind us that voting restrictions weren't just about laws. They were about power, control, and the denial of basic human dignity. But the civil rights movement of the 1950s and 1960s brought national attention to these injustices. Leaders like Anna Arnold Hedgeman, Dorothy Height, and the Bates family fought tirelessly to dismantle these barriers and secure voting rights for all Americans. They organized marches, protests, and voter registration drives, often at great personal risk. In 1964, the Freedom Summer Project brought hundreds of volunteers to Mississippi to register African American voters. Many were met with violence, but their courage helped shine a light on the systemic racism embedded in the voting system. On August 6, 1965, President Lyndon B. Johnson signed the Voting Rights Act into law. This landmark legislation outlawed discriminatory practices like poll taxes and literacy tests. It also provided federal oversight of elections in states with a history of voter suppression. The impact was immediate and profound. Millions of African Americans were able to vote for the first time, and voter turnout in the South skyrocketed. The Voting Rights Act was a turning point in the fight for racial equality in the United States. But the fight for voting rights didn't end in 1965. Today, new challenges like strict voter ID laws, gerrymandering, and gutting of key provisions of the Voting Rights Act and the 2013 Supreme Court case Shelby County v. Holder threaten to undermine the progress we've made. These modern barriers disproportionately affect communities of color, low-income individuals, and young voters. They remind us that the struggle for fair and equal access to the ballot box is far from over. The history of voting rights in America is a testament to the resilience and determination of those who fought for equality. From the abolition of poll taxes and literacy tests to the ongoing battles against modern voter suppression, the fight for voting rights is a fight for the soul of our country. As we reflect of this history, let us remember the sacrifices made by those who came before us, and let us honor their legacy by continuing to fight for a country that may one day represent all of its citizens. Because voting is not just a right, it's a responsibility. And it's up to us to protect it. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and keep making history. I'm Daryl Omar, and I'll see you soon.